Was I wrong for what I did? Tell me if you would have done the same thing. Because what started as a simple, innocent exchange of letters with a military pen pal spiraled into something so profound, so earth-shattering, that it fundamentally altered my entire perception of family, identity, and the very fabric of my past. It turns out, the soldier I was writing to, the one I shared my deepest secrets with through encrypted messages and veiled references, was not just some random stranger. He was my long-lost sibling, separated from me by a secret my parents had buried for decades, and the way I discovered it. It was all thanks to a hidden code, a series of subtle clues woven into his letters that only I, with my unique history, could possibly decipher. It all started rather innocently, or so I thought at the time. I was in my final year of high school, feeling a bit adrift, searching for something meaningful to fill the void that often accompanies the transition into adulthood. Our English teacher, Mrs. Davison, a sweet but slightly eccentric woman with a penchant for sentimental projects, introduced the idea of a military pen pal program. It's a wonderful way to connect with those serving our country, she'd explained, her voice thick with emotion, and it provides a much-needed morale boost for our brave soldiers overseas. Most of my classmates groaned, envisioning forced, awkward letters filled with polite platitudes, but something about it appealed to me. I'd always been a bit of an old soul, more comfortable with the written word than with fleeting social media interactions. Plus, I harbored a deep respect for those in uniform, a quiet admiration instilled in me by my grandfather, a stoic veteran of a forgotten war. So I signed up. A few weeks later, a letter arrived with a distinctive postmark, crisp and official. It was from Sergeant Elias Vance, stationed somewhere in a sandy, desolate landscape. His first letter was exactly what you'd expect, polite, formal, a bit generic. He thanked me for writing, asked about my hobbies, and shared a few sanitized details about his daily life, mostly involving endless drills and the camaraderie of his unit. I wrote back, equally polite, talking about school, my love for old books, and the mundane dramas of teenage life. For the first few months, our correspondence followed this predictable pattern. We were two strangers, exchanging pleasantries across continents, our lives seemingly disparate and unconnected. But then, things began to shift, subtly at first. Elias started sharing more personal anecdotes, small glimpses into his thoughts and feelings that went beyond the surface. He talked about missing home, not just the physical place, but the feeling of belonging, of a true family. He mentioned a recurring dream he had, a vivid image of a specific old oak tree with a tire swing, and a faded yellow house next to it. What struck me about this detail was that my own childhood home, the one my parents had sold when I was very young, had an identical oak tree with a tire swing, and it too was a faded yellow. I brushed it off as a coincidence, a common enough image, but a tiny seed of curiosity was planted. Our letters became more frequent, more intimate. We started developing an easy rapport, a comfortable familiarity that transcended the thousands of miles between us. He'd send me photos of the desert landscape, and I'd send him pictures of my cat. We discussed everything from philosophy to our favorite comfort foods. It was in one of these more open letters that Elias started weaving in odd phrases, seemingly random words that, to anyone else, would appear innocuous. He'd write things like, "The willow in our base camp provides the only shade," or I often find myself humming that old tune, Sweet Caroline, when I'm on patrol. At first, I paid them no mind, but then the phrases grew more frequent, more specific. He started incorporating numbers into his stories, not just dates or times, but sequences that seemed out of place. The 7th Patrol led us past a monument built in '88. He wrote once, "Or I saw a stray dog today." It reminded me of the one from apartment 3B in that old sitcom. It was the combination of these seemingly random details, the oak tree, the yellow house, and now these strange words and numbers that began to prickle at the back of my mind. My parents had always been notoriously private about their past. Any mention of their lives before I was born was met with vague answers or a swift change of subject. I knew they'd both grown up in a small town, but they rarely spoke of extended family or childhood memories. I was an only child, and that was always presented as an undeniable fact. Yet, I had always felt a peculiar sense of incompleteness, a feeling that a piece of my personal history was missing. One evening, while rereading a stack of Elias's letters, I noticed a pattern. The capitalized words, the specific years, the seemingly trivial details, they weren't random at all. They felt like breadcrumbs. I remembered an old game my grandfather used to play with me when I was little, a simple cipher where we'd use the first letter of specific words to spell out a message. It was a long shot, but what if Elias was doing something similar? What if he was trying to communicate something that couldn't be said directly? I grabbed a notebook and started jotting down every capitalized word, every specific number, every unusual phrase he'd used over the past few months. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a mixture of excitement and trepidation. My heart pounded as I began to piece things together. The willow in his base camp. My mother's maiden name was Miller, but her childhood nickname, which I'd only heard once from an estranged aunt, was Willow. The year '88. My birth year was '90, but my parents had met and married in '88, a detail I'd only recently learned from an old photo album. Sweet Caroline. My grandmother, who had passed away before I was born, was named Caroline, apartment 3B. My grandfather, in a moment of rare garrulousness, once mentioned living in apartment 3B. In their first years of marriage, it was like solving a complex puzzle, each piece clicking into place with unnerving precision. But the final, most chilling piece of the puzzle came from a particular sequence of numbers Elias had included in a letter about his Yun, its call signs, 27-03-90. My birthday was March 27, 1990. My mind reeled. It couldn't be a coincidence. No way. The oak tree, the yellow house, my mother's nickname, my grandmother's name, my grandfather's old apartment number, and now, my exact birthday. This wasn't a game. This was a message. And the message, unspoken but screamingly clear, was that we were connected by something far deeper than a pen pal program. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confronted your parents with this potentially devastating information? Or would you have tried to get more proof, perhaps even directly asking Elias? What would your first move be if you discovered such a hidden code from a stranger that pointed to a secret sibling? My hands were shaking as I held the notebook, the pieces of the puzzle laid bare before me. Elias was hinting that we shared a birthday, and all these other details pointed to a shared family history. The only logical conclusion, the one that made my stomach clench with a mixture of hope and dread, was that Elias Vance was my brother, my secret, long, lost brother. The idea was overwhelming, almost unbelievable. My parents, who had always presented such a pristine image of their lives, had kept this monumental secret from me for my entire existence. The anger began to simmer, a slow burn beneath the shock. I knew I couldn't confront my parents yet. I needed more definitive proof, something undeniable, and the only person who could provide that was Elias himself. But how do you ask a complete stranger, a military pen pal, "Are you my brother, and did our parents give you up for adoption?" It felt absurd, invasive, and potentially devastating. I agonized over my next letter. I couldn't be too direct, in case I was wrong and humiliated myself. I needed to send my own coded message, a response that only he would understand if my theory was correct. I decided to include a specific detail in my next letter, something personal and obscure from my earliest childhood memories, something only a sibling who had shared those first few years with me could possibly know. I wrote about a vivid, fragmented memory of a broken blue ceramic bird, a little trinket that had sat on our kitchen windowsill in that faded yellow house, and how I'd accidentally knocked it over, shattering it. My parents had told me it was a gift from an old friend, but the way they'd reacted to its breaking always felt disproportionate, as if it held a deeper significance. I didn't explicitly ask anything. I just wove the anecdote into a longer paragraph about childhood nostalgia, hoping he would pick up on it. The wait for his reply was agonizing. Every day felt like an eternity. When the letter finally arrived, it was thicker than usual, and I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs. I tore it open with trembling hands. Elias began with his usual updates, but then, towards the middle, my eyes darted to a particular sentence. "It's funny," he wrote, "you mentioned that blue ceramic bird. I have a very faint memory of that. I think I was the one who actually broke it, not you. I remember feeling so guilty, and our mother was devastated." The world tilted. My breath caught in my throat. He remembered. He didn't just remember. He corrected my memory, providing a detail that only someone who was there could know. "Our mother," he said, "our mother." There it was, the undeniable confirmation. Elias Vance was my brother. My older brother, it seemed, given his memory of the event. Tears welled in my eyes, a mixture of profound sadness, overwhelming joy, and a deep, simmering rage. Sadness for the lost years, for the bond we could have shared. Joy for having found him, and rage at my parents for their deception, for robbing us of a lifetime of connection. My next letter to Elias was different. It was honest, raw, and trembling with emotion. I laid out all the pieces of the puzzle I had solved, the hidden code, the coincidences that weren't coincidences. I told him about the oak tree, the yellow house, our shared birthday, the blue ceramic bird. I ended the letter with a simple, desperate plea. "Are you my brother, Elias? Please, tell me everything." His reply came swiftly, a special delivery this time, not through the usual military mail. It was a long, handwritten letter, pages filled with a story that broke my heart and simultaneously healed a part of me I didn't even know was wounded. Elias confirmed everything. He was indeed my older brother, given up for adoption shortly after his birth. My parents were very young, barely out of high school, and facing immense pressure from their conservative families. They weren't married yet, and a baby out of wedlock was a scandal in their small town. They had made the agonizing decision to give him up, promising each other they would one day find him, but life and fear got in the way. They married 2 years later and had me. They never stopped thinking about him, Elias wrote, but the secret grew too big, too painful to reveal. He'd been adopted by a loving family, had a good life, but always felt a profound sense of something missing. He'd done his own research over the years, piecing together fragments of his past, and eventually discovered the identity of his birth parents. He knew about me. He had seen my name on a family tree online. He had purposefully signed up for the Pen Pal program, hoping to find a way to connect. to test the waters without revealing the truth too abruptly. He'd recognized my name from the list, seen the potential, and started his subtle, coded messages, hoping I would be the one to decipher them. The confrontation with my parents was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I showed them Elias's letter, my face streaked with tears, my voice shaking with a mixture of betrayal and sorrow. They broke down, their carefully constructed facade crumbling before my eyes. They explained the circumstances, the shame, the fear, the desperate hope that one day they could tell me, but they never found the right time. They apologized profusely, their faces etched with decades of guilt. It wasn't an easy conversation, and the wounds it exposed were deep, but it was also a necessary one. The aftermath has been a whirlwind of emotions. Elias and I continued to correspond, and as soon as his tour of duty ended, we met. It was surreal, stepping out of the airport and seeing a man who looked so eerily familiar, a stranger who was intrinsically linked to my very being. There were awkward hugs, a few tears, and an immediate, undeniable connection. We spent weeks catching up, sharing stories, filling in the gaps of our separate lives. My parents, after their initial shock and heartbreak, have cautiously reconnected with Elias, slowly rebuilding a relationship that should have been there all along. It's still a work in progress, full of complexities and raw emotions, but there's a fragile hope, a tentative peace. Finding Elias has irrevocably changed my life. It answered so many unspoken questions I never knew I had, filled a void I hadn't fully recognized. I'm no longer an only child. I have a brother, a brave, intelligent, and incredibly thoughtful brother, who went to extraordinary lengths to find me. The hidden code wasn't just a puzzle. It was a bridge, built on love and a deep human need for connection, a testament to the fact that some bonds are simply too strong to be broken, even by decades of silence and secrecy. The truth, however painful it was to uncover, ultimately set us all free. It forced us to confront our pasts, to forgive, and to rebuild. So, was I wrong for pushing, for deciphering the code, for forcing my parents to face their past? I don't think so. I believe some truths need to come to light, no matter how difficult. It led me to my brother, and for that, I will be forever grateful. Like this video if you were on my side. Subscribe for more stories like this. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.